Welcome to this conversation where we will be introducing the lecture series called The Making of Kenya. This is a series that seeks to review the level of understanding and our deep reflection on what the making of Kenya is all about. We shall have 2 episodes that shall examine and deep dive into the past, into the present, and to imagine the future as well. We shall be telling stories that are unheard. We shall be telling stories that you may have heard in a different perspective. We shall be telling stories that are harmful, that stories that can destroy people. We shall be telling stories that shall traumatize people. We shall tell stories that shall liberate people. We shall also tell stories that are triumphant, that reflect the triumphance of human spirit against insurmountable odds. These stories, cumulatively, they will tell the story of Kenya and how Kenya came to be. But at the start of this story, it will be at a time when Kenya was not yet called Kenya. This state called Kenya had not been born yet. We shall locate a place in time in the ancient world, in the old world, a world that was based on civilizations of old. And we shall examine the place of African civilizations in this ancient world and what contribution these ancient African civilizations made to the world. But in order for us to start this storytelling session, we must start by sharing with you what is the purpose of these lectures. These 2 lectures would be targeting young adult Kenyans, Kenyans who are between the ages of 18 and 30 years old. We have chosen this category because it forms one of the largest segments of the people of Kenya. And many will say that the future belongs to them. But we have also chosen this group to interact with them and share with them our understanding and share with them our experience so that we are able to redefine, deconstruct the past so that this past comes alive. These stories with these young people would also examine our present with all its complications. But it will also look into the future and explore different pathways of what is possible for Kenya. And using our imagination, we will explore the different paths that are awaiting Kenya. Some good, some not so good, and some very challenging. But at the beginning of this story, we will also use the Swahili storytelling technique called hadithi. We will also tamper this hadithi technique with other Kenyan community storytelling techniques, including the technique that was popularized by merging very many community storytelling techniques, but also using a base of the Luo storytelling technique, the Sigana. So as somebody who comes from the Swahili community, I will start with the Swahili storytelling, but I will add others. But also it is important for us to remember in telling these stories, we shall also use many sources. We know in many of our academic institutions, our academic institutions, our education system has created a system that does not tell the whole story. It only tells part of the story of this nation called Kenya. It only tells a part of the story from a part of a perspective, and mainly Eurocentric perspective. So we shall also focus on African interests, a Pan-African approach, a Kenyan approach, an approach that seeks to liberate us from colonial mentality, from colonial capture. In these sources, we shall identify world-famous scholars who Kenyan young people may not even have heard of, or they may have heard of them, but they have not intimately interacted with them. In these stories, we shall also use both written records and orature records, records that are placed in the hearts and minds of all Africans based on their oral tradition. And we shall use these oral traditions that seeks to capture and store knowledge in a way that is uniquely to communities that use orature as a base of imagining, as a base of thinking, as a base of education, and as a base of connecting the past, the present, and imagining the future. And these stories will also be told in such a way that those who would interact with us in these lectures will have an opportunity to send their feedback and send their reflections and ask more questions. But in the post-production work that will be done on the lecture, we will also put references there where people can use their own resources to check the facts that we'll be presenting, to check the stories that we'll be presenting, to check the perspectives that we'll be presenting. Some of the scholars that we will be interacting with include Sheikh Anta Diop, the father of African Renaissance, a scholar, a scientist, a historian, a politician, a Renaissance man, if you like. He who has invested time, effort, and research to look at the place of the old ancient African civilizations and their contribution to the world, and the many fantastic innovations, many fantastic research that has transformed nations and societies. We should also look at the work of our own Ngugi wa Thiong'o. And Ngugi wa Thiong'o, we will look at three elements of the many things he has developed, we think are very important for this generation of the 18-year-olds to the 30 years old. We will be looking at his ideas about how to decolonize the mind. We will look at his idea of how to recenter the world so that it is more progressive and democratic. But we will also look at his ideas of language and memory. We will also look at another eminent scholar. He's called Said Hussein Al-Attasi. And from Said Hussein Al-Attasi, who is an eminent scholar and politician from the Far East, we will look at two important ideas that he has put forth. One is the myth of the lazy native. And he has written a whole book on this myth. In a short summary, this myth deals with the attitudes of colonial forces, of Europeans who develop ideas that the native is lazy. And we have embraced this idea, and today in Kenya, you will hear people characterizing certain communities as lazy, particularly from the communities that I come from. They will say people from the coast of Kenya are lazy, that they will sit under a coconut tree or a mango tree and wait for the coconut to fall on them. But you see, this is based on ignorance. A coconut will never fall from a coconut tree or a palm tree. Whatever falls is not a coconut. It's spoiled product. Neither would you find our people sitting under coconut, mango trees waiting for mangoes to fall down. So he analyzes this idea and where it came from. And in a nutshell, it came from the Europeans who were trying to dominate and oppress local people. And they are seeing that these local people are not cooperating with them. They did not know this is a way of resistance. Passive resistance, some people would say, but it is resistance. And it was a way of people saying, we cannot participate in your project to oppress us. But that is part of the story in the lecture. But we will also look at his ideas of the captive mind. This eminent scholar addresses the issue of a part of the local elite being developed and their minds being designed to be captured, so they become part and parcel of the occupation process. They become part and parcel of the retention of the colonial state even after the colonial forces have been defeated. Lastly, in this segment, I would like to address the question of you lending us your ears and attention. It is important for you to listen and to watch our presentation. I know some of the things that we'll be saying will be traumatic. Some of the things that we'll be saying will be difficult. Some of the things that we'll be saying would be disturbing. But also we will blend this with the spirit of resistance, of struggle, of wanting to chart your own future and our own future. The right to self-determination. And we will also examine the various aspects that even today continue to shape our lives. Thank you for your kind attention.